Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
Conrad, I'm happy as I can be. I'm with you. I'm with Stud Muffin, and we have one of the biggest heel turns in the history of wrestling. I tried to tell you guys about Cena 20 years ago. I told you about Cena and that deadbeat dad Rey Mysterio, and it's all coming true. I'm freaking Nostradamus.
There is no doubt you had this pegged a long time ago. In all seriousness, though, it's got to be near the top of the greatest turns in the history of wrestling, right? I think most people still hold the Hogan NWO turn at number one, but this has got to be 1B or 2, right?
It has to be, yeah. You know, Hogan's changed the business. I don't know about changed the business. It certainly accelerated the business. It's put us into the Monday Night Wars and the competition that I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. I think this thing with Cena, though, to me, it's almost Dusty Rhodes-ish that you see something like this against Cody Rhodes. People were making fun about a month ago about how the road to WrestleMania was not that good. And I love the fact that Triple H brought it up. And just like you and I pointed out last week, we said because the road to WrestleMania is so much further, because we have so much time after Royal Rumble to almost the end of April or middle of April to the end of April for WrestleMania, that something would happen at this pay-per-view, this premium live event. And that's exactly what happened.
It was an incredible performance by all involved, and it was just a stroke of genius. It's one thing to have, John Cena turn heel. It's another for it to happen on the road to WrestleMania after a major pay-per-view in an international dome with one of the biggest movie stars and one of the biggest musicians. And I know there's been some criticism about Travis Scott's involvement. The dude had 11 billion streams on Spotify last year. He has 58 million followers on IG, and he posted this video there. If you're talking about getting impressions out there, getting lapsed fans out there, getting casual people to come check out WWE, I thought this checked all the boxes, dude.
I don't see how it couldn't. You've got literally the biggest movie star in the world. I just saw the money list in some magazine about who made the most money last year. At least it reported that Rock was the highest at 88 million. Don't know if the truth of that or not. I know he's. I say the truth of that. How much he made? Whether it's 100 million, 88, 200 million, who knows? He's the biggest star in the world. And then you've got Cena, who's 16-time world champion, going to break that record that people thought might never be broken. And then you add in this other super mega star. I mean, this is brilliant. This is absolutely fantastic. I love Triple H showing up and spiking the football saying, are we on the road to WrestleMania now?
I can't wait to see what happens next. They've already started announcing John Cena return dates to some markets, and we know this is his farewell tour. I'm sure those are going to be massive. But what I really loved is it shows you the depth of the roster that WWE has, because years ago, if something major like that happened on a Saturday night, boy, that'll be the central theme the entire Monday. We got all the way through Monday with no Cody, no Rock, and no Cena, and we started with a bang with that CM Punk promo. What'd you think of Punk's promo, man?
Fantastic. I love what CM Punk has been doing. Sometimes just having that background of what all you've done in your library and what you've done in your life adds to what's coming. So it's not just a great promo. It's also the history that CM Punk has had leading up to this moment. And I think CM Punk, I thought the last several years he's been hitting on all cylinders.
I can't wait to see where this all winds up. And the big question is, what are you going to do with Roman? What would you do with Roman in time for WrestleMania, John? Isn't it interesting? The guy who's headlined the last 4 WrestleManias, we don't even know what he's doing yet. That tells you how deep this roster is right now.
Yeah, and I would imagine, and I have no insight into anything. This is just pure armchair quarterback, which, by the way, all these armchair quarterbacks have been wrong. And I think it's great, not because they're wrong, but I love the fact they speculate just like I do. And I look at stuff and figure, where are they going from here? Or what are they going to do? It's fun to do that. I think Roman's going to be involved somewhere. And I don't know if that is, maybe he's the third person when Rock brought up the 3 fingers. Maybe that's the third person. Maybe he goes to the other side with Cody. Roman is the missing piece here. And because the fact that he is so absent, I think it means that he's going to be in this. I think if Roman's on the TV show and he's doing something with somebody else, I think maybe you can say maybe Roman's going somewhere else. But the fact that Roman's so absent, my opinion is he's going to be in this. I hope he is, because now you've got a guy who's headlined more WrestleManias than anybody with all of these incredible stars, and this Cody Rhodes, who's just done a fantastic job the last couple of years. I don't know how you get more star-studded than this. I mean, dig up San Martino and Jim Londos and John Wayne and bring those guys in. I don't know how you get bigger than this.
It's interesting to think how the internet wrestling community now is playing Clue. They go back and they reviewed the footage from last year where Rock laid that beat down on John Cena outside in the rain. And the truck, the TV truck in the background that was framed perfectly for those shots, featured John Cena and later Stone Cold. And there's even been speculation, I guess, based on an old interview that Stone Cold did, maybe not too long ago, where he mentioned, hey, WrestleMania is going to be in Nevada, and that's not too far for me. And if Cody needs my help, I'll be there. Like, just those little teases. This is going to be the biggest WrestleMania ever, right, John?
No doubt about it. Can you imagine if that glass breaks? I mean, holy shit, that'll be a moment that people will live forever. I mean, I was there at WrestleMania when, as King called it, down in New Orleans, when everybody's chanting yes after Daniel Bryan finally overcomes all the odds put against him. I was there when Dolph cashed in against Alberto. I was there when Seth cashed in against Roman and Brock. I've seen some of these incredible. There's nothing like an incredible moment to see personally, either on TV or live, especially live. But if that glass breaks, holy shit, boys, we've reached a new level.
I can't wait to see what they do, and it's going to be interesting to see where all these breadcrumbs lead. I do want to ask you about something that happened, though. There was a comment that Punk threw out in his promo where he mentioned Becky Lynch. And there's been lots of rumor and innuendo that AJ Lee has gotten herself in fantastic shape. I guess she's been posting ab selfies. And I had a wrestling fan friend of mine point out that at least a couple of the ladies on the PLE this past weekend were sitting in the ropes, sort of like AJ did back in the day. Do you think that winds up being a mixed tag? Do you think it winds up being Seth and Becky against AJ and Punk at Mania?
I think, to me, I think that would be fantastic. Yes. I don't have anything negative to say about this stuff. People say, why are you so positive? Because I think it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
AJ Lee was fantastic. I did a lot of commentary with her. When she did guest commentary, she's a very smart person. She's very good at what she does. She was an incredibly popular person. Her coming back, I think, would be enormous. And I think that'd be a lot of fun to have her and CM against Becky and Seth. I think that'd be a lot of fun to have.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fun WrestleMania weekend. It's always really a week because you start with Monday Night Raw and then you've got all the little ancillary shows along the way. Of course, we're going to see NXT. I'm sure we're going to see Evolve, but there's all these other organizations, independent groups that years ago, it felt like WWE did not like piggybacking their success on WrestleMania. I've heard stories that they would go and get holds on a variety of buildings and just make it darn near impossible for anyone to book near them. They didn't want WrestleCon near Access. They didn't want GCW and Joey Janela's Spring Break near WrestleMania. I get all that. But it feels like there's been a paradigm shift because we just saw Natty Neidhart is going to make her GCW debut for Bloodsport. It's happening Thursday, April 17th. We've never seen, quote unquote, Natalya outside the confines of WWE, and she is certainly under contract to WWE. But now we're going to get to see, as Bruce would say, Natty with a fresh paint of coat. How pumped are you for this?
I think it's great. For one, I love Natty. Absolutely love Natty. Her and TJ, what a wonderful couple of people. But Natty is such a, I was good friends with Jim, her dad, and I lived in close proximity to Jim when we lived together in Europe and worked over there for Otto. I think we were in Bremen. I think we was where he was, Bremen or Hanover. But Jim was there for the whole 6 weeks of whatever that town was. I think it was Bremen. So I've always had a love for Natty because of my love for her dad, Jim. I think it's fantastic. There's never been a better time for guys to make a name for themselves outside of the traditional means. And I think Natty's going to do a great job with this. She's kind of got it. I've been seeing her social media. She's got a good concept of what she needs to do as far as a progression. And I think it's very good. If you can't make a name for yourself now, you can't make a name for yourself. I mean, guys who are sitting back and girls sitting back that are waiting on the company to do something for them, you're just missing the boat. There's more opportunity now than I've ever seen in wrestling, and I've been in it for 30 plus years.
Well, I can't wait to see what she does. I've been a Natty Neidhart fan for a long time. I felt like she was criminally underrated and underutilized at times in her WWE run. I don't know that anyone would argue that. I mean, she sort of predates the women's revolution. I mean, she was a great women's wrestler even during the Divas era. And it's hard to really show what you can do when you've got 3 minutes, including entrances. I mean, what can we even do with that? So we're going to get to see a new side of Natalya. Not only will she be at Bloodsport, I'm just a big Natty fan, so I'm going to plug it. She's going to the Crockett Cup for the NWA. I can't believe that's a real thing, but she's going to be in GCW in April and the NWA in May. This is a paradigm shift for WWE. And some people are going to say, well, this is in response to the antitrust lawsuit and the MLW settlement. And I'm sure that plays a factor. But I also think this is just a paradigm shift based on the way Vince saw WWE versus the way Triple H sees wrestling. Would you agree with that?
I do. Yeah. You know, Vince, now you got to understand, Vince came from a different generation than Triple H and me. Me and Hunter are from the same generation. Vince had it where you had competition and people were trying to put you out of business. So he had to fight Crockett. You know, this wasn't, I know this cup is named after Crockett, but he was literally fighting Crockett for survival. You know, he's getting Piper out of, you know, Starrcade 83, when Crockett put that out, there's 10 or 12 future WWE Hall of Famers on that card. So there was real competition between Vince and Crockett and Vince and all the territories. Vince carried that mindset into the current generation. It's different now. There's not real competition. You know, these guys, they're selling out, but it's a world of difference between selling out a 5,000 seat arena, or even a 10,000 seat arena, to selling out football stadiums back to back, and what WWE is doing. To me, WWE has found a way to have a bunch of NXTs. Simply, they work with TNA. They work with, it looks like Billy Corgan is who they're working with. Working with all these different groups. They're working with different groups, and like Noah, working with AAA. They're doing this, and they're able to get a feeder system to come into them. They need so much talent. They have so much content to fill, and I have a feeling their ambitions are bigger than what they currently have. I have a feeling they're going to be setting up different territories in different continents. I don't know that for sure. I just know that Vince had that idea 30 years ago. I used to hear him talk about it all the time. And I think that's probably still the thing to do. I think it makes a lot of sense. They need a lot of talent. They can't grow it all themselves. And if you're growing it all yourself in one place, talent starts to look alike. And so you're able to get talent from different areas. I think it's great what WWE is doing.
I can't wait to see what's next. Listen, we don't talk about politics on this show. We're supposed to be an escape from pro wrestling or from real life and just waller in pro wrestling and have some fun. But I do need to mention that since you and I recorded, Linda McMahon was confirmed. She's now officially a part of Trump's cabinet. And this photo that you're looking at right now, if you're watching with us over at somethingtowrestle.com, this looks like it's AI generated. Front and center, but in the background, we see Shane, we see Stephanie, we see Triple H. Is it surreal to you to know that, you know, someone you worked with for a long time and know personally is now in the orbit of the president of the United States? You're 1 degree separated from the president of the United States. That's crazy, isn't it?
It's nuts. And I did a lot with Miss McMahon when they did the road show for the IPO, when they first came out for NASDAQ and then for the NYSE. So I worked with her a lot. I was with her, you know, me and her, and then, you know, a couple other people would go to investors and stuff. And I did a lot of those with her. You know, I was the one talent that kind of brought, but because of my financial stuff I was doing, I could bring a little bit more than just the normal talent. But so I have a huge admiration for Miss McMahon. I think she's an incredibly talented lady. I think it makes perfect sense for her to be there. I think she'll do a wonderful job. And by the way, all those people who said that Triple H and Stephanie and Shane and back behind them, that they shouldn't do that for political reasons, man, go screw yourself. That's their mother. You know, fuck you. I mean, that you know, you're supporting your family, and you know, no matter what the politics are, I don't care. If that's your mother that's sitting there talking in front of Congress, besides the fact that she's an incredible business person, you got to be there. That's got to be really cool for them to see that, hey, look, this is my mom that's sitting there and she's going to be working with the president. Forget what you think about the president, good, bad, or indifferent. That's really cool.
I can't agree with you anymore. I mean, if it's your mom, I'm going to be behind mom no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're not making a political statement. They're making a family statement. And I thought it was awesome that they were there to support her. I thought it was fantastic. I'm so happy for Mrs. McMahon.
Hey, I do want to, normally I would do this off air, but I was picking up what you were putting down last week on the show, and I can't help but think maybe you're thinking about getting back in the ring. And I just know that sometimes when guys do that, they sort of reinvent themselves. They have to come up with like a new character. And we've seen Justin Hawk Bradshaw, and we've seen an Acolyte, and we've seen the APA, and we've seen JBL. But I'm thinking if you really are going to maybe step back between the ropes one day, maybe you need a fresh paint of coat yourself. So I thought, what about a look like this, John? Do you think you could pull this one off? I mean,
oh my goodness.
I found this photo of John Paul Levesque, this promo photo from WCW, and I tweeted last night, this look would kill on the indies. And I regret that I didn't just send that directly to you, because if you were to show up in GCW or something like that, dressed like this, buddy, I just think your heat would be next level. Should we get your measurements going, or what do you think?
I think we should go to a tailor right now and get this stuff done. The stuff we did when we were trying to make it, me and Hunter and everybody else, you do stuff, you think, this is a really good idea. Then you look back 30 years later and go, what the hell was I thinking? But yes,
I would like to work. That'd get heat today. It would.
That would get massive heat today.
Yes.
Yes. Because if you look at it, you go, who would wear that? That's exactly why you do wear it.
I mean, what would your gimmick name be? Would it be John Bradshaw Levesque, or what do you think? John. Oh, that's it. John Bradshaw.
John to be John. That's right. That's right.
Somebody who's awfully near and dear to your heart, and really just a beloved member of the entire wrestling family, the one and only Jerry Brisco. I got to hear from you, though. How did you first meet him? Would it have been when you first went to WWE, or did you run across him somehow else?
Nope, I never met him before. Now, obviously, I knew exactly who he was. His name precedes himself everywhere he goes. And I'd never met him. I'd never met J.J. Dillon. But then after the match that I had with Savio Vega in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, my tryout match, I came back and I remember asking Dutch. I said, because Dutch had walked out with me, I said, how was it? And he goes, well, that doesn't get you a job. I don't know what will. And I went back to the dressing room and nobody said anything. I thought, well, I guess it didn't get me a job. I'm going to WCW. And so I went to take a shower, and in comes JJ and Jerry Brisco, and sat there and talked to me while I was buck naked and offered me a job. That's the first time I met him. I don't think I met Jerry before the match. I met Bruce before, but I don't think I met Jerry. He was about the only one watching the match, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So I don't even know if JJ watched it. I don't know that for sure, but I know Vince did not watch it because Vince was in makeup getting stuff done because he was doing commentary at that point, I believe. And so Vince didn't see it. So Jerry went to Vince and said, hey, we got to sign this guy. And Vince said, who is it? And he goes, and he told him the name. Vince had never heard of me. And he said, is he that good? And he goes, yeah, but he's going to WCW tomorrow. If we don't sign him, he's going to go down there. We'll never see him again. And that's what Jerry thought, at least. And Vince goes, sign him. So that was, Vince had enough belief in Gerald Brisco to let him sign somebody that Vince had never seen. So that's when Jerry came in, talked to me in the shower, and signed me.
I hope every young wrestler who's looking to get signed heard that story. Not enough people in wrestling understand leverage today.
That's right. They don't understand leverage at all. And they'll sit there and they'll say, and this is like a PSA, like exactly what you just did to young guys, they'll start to get signed somewhere and they'll quit doing all their other bookings. Dumbest thing in the world. You lose all leverage. You got to have some leverage in negotiation.
The little nuggets, if you're really listening to the show every now and again.
100%. That right there is worth make people a lot of freaking money. That advice, a lot of money, their entire life. It'll make them a lot of money.
Yes. Hey, so let's talk about the legacy of Gerald Brisco, because I know that, people who are listening to this know that he was an incredible tag team with his brother, Jack. And obviously Jack was the NWA champion, and, they had ownership interest in Georgia, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. But some little nuggets that I don't think he gets enough credit for. Like these days, people talk about, and rightfully so, Colt Cabana in high regard. I mean, he was the guy who really embraced the T-shirt business that ultimately became Pro Wrestling Tees. Mm-hmm. He was the guy who really innovated, for lack of a better word, pro wrestling podcasts. I mean, I know there had been audio streams before in WCW Live and all that sort of thing, but in the modern era, people give a lot of praise to Colt Cabana, and rightfully so.
Yep.
But once upon a time, we made our money at the merch table a little differently. We didn't have the WWE shop zone and things like that. Tell us about Gerald Brisco's innovations in that regard.
Yeah, I sure will. And I want to go back real quick to the first meeting so I don't forget it, because it's important to at least to my life. Because when I was sitting there and Jerry offered me a deal, he said, "Hey, we want to talk to you." And I'm standing there buck naked in the shower, by the way. So grab my towel and I'm sitting there. I'm talking to him and JJ Dillon, these two legends, that I had just heard of. And of course, JJ seen so much on television, and Jerry too. And he says, we understand you're going to WCW. And I said, I am. And he said, we want to sign you. And I said, okay. And Jerry said, well, don't go to WCW. And I said, okay. And he said, you could tell we're kind of at this standoff. And he said, well, how do we know you're not going to WCW? I said, how do I know you're going to sign me? And he said, I'll give you my handshake. And I'm sitting there, Conrad, and understand, I've worked for years to get to this point. This is the most important decision of my life that I'm going to make. I'm about to make a decision who I go to work for and who I will probably be working for the majority of my life, at least as far as importance for the rest of my life. And I've got to make a judgment. Do I trust this man behind the hand enough to shake his hand and say, okay, I'm going to do this and forego this, any type of leverage that I have of anywhere else, and tell WCW I'm not coming. And I sat there for just a couple seconds and I thought, oh my God, I'm not qualified to make this decision. I can't read this man's mind. I don't know him. So I just looked at him and I thought, you know what? There's something about Gerald Brisco that I trust. And I literally thought that as I sat there and looked at him, I thought there's something about this man I trust. I shook his hand, and it was the best decision that I've ever made. Not only did I go with the right company, no offense to WCW, but with Vince and Jerry there and Bruce, I did so much better, I think, that I probably would have done WCW. But I got a friend for life for Gerald Brisco for 30 plus years now, and that's been a more blessing than anything I've ever done as far as a career or anything else. So but that moment though about realizing if I'm gonna shake this hand, I'm making the business decision of my life based upon a person I've never met before. But for some reason, I trusted Gerald Brisco, and it worked out.
I love that story.
And then to go on to the merch,
yes.
Jerry and Les Thatcher. Jerry went to a concert, and I can't remember which one it was. They're in the Carolinas. It may have been the Rolling Stones or somebody, and they saw. I can't remember. Jerry's told me the story many times. They saw the shirts that were being sold. And so Jerry thought this is a great idea to sell wrestling shirts. Nobody did it at the time. So Jerry and Les Thatcher both invented the wrestling shirt. Jerry has always been a guy. He and his brother Jack both. They're very, very smart people. Jerry's made a ton of money in his life off real estate, off of his body shop, and all of his investments. He's kind of just like this good-natured, fun guy. He's a very smart guy and a very good businessman. That's why Vince loved him so much. He's the only guy, by the way, who out-negotiated Vince. And Vince will tell you that to this day. That I'll tell you the joke in a minute about what Vince has said about 1,000 times that I've heard about it. But Jerry came up with this idea of the T-shirts with Les Thatcher. They would print these T-shirts up and then keep them in an extra bedroom in their closet. I mean, they're not just saying, hey, print some shirts. They did this themselves. I mean, they were making a ton of money off this stuff. And then as anything happens, the promoter comes in and says, hey, we won't take a cut of that. And then it's, kills the deal. But they had to create the merch table. The merch table that you have now, they had no place to sell them. So when they first pitched this idea to Crockett goes, I don't care, sell whatever. So then they realized they don't have a place to sell them. So they created the merch table. They created all this stuff in the arena. These things are selling like hotcakes. And all of a sudden, Crockett and all the promoters go, hey, we want to get our cut, which was actually a huge cut. And so that's when Jerry and them kind of abandoned the whole idea. But they created the whole thing. And for a long time, printed the shirts themselves, stored the shirts themselves, sold the shirts themselves, and did all of this, the whole supply chain completely by themselves. It was really pretty revolutionary what Jerry did.
I love hearing you talk about your pal Jerry. I do want to hear, you have somewhere in your notes here for me, Sawyer Brown. There was an incident with Sawyer Brown. What is it with guys on our podcast network and Sawyer Brown, whether it's Bruce or
was there
for you?
Did Bruce have something with Sawyer Brown?
Everybody feels like they're talking about Sawyer Brown, and I'm like, I don't even have one Sawyer Brown song on my phone. I couldn't tell you one song that I got to pay more attention. But what happened at Sawyer Brown with you and Mr. Brisco?
Well, first of all, Sawyer Brown's awesome, and they were either in Nashville or Knoxville, and they were going to play on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or something, whatever it was. And a lot of these groups, when they came in, they would do their sound check. Well, all the boys and girls are out there, going over the matches and stuff like that. So invariably, I mean, these bands are good. Sawyer Brown's awesome. They're sitting there playing their song, doing a sound check. And so all the guys are starting to listen, and sing along, the guys that knew it and they're having a good time. So Sawyer Brown goes through his entire set. It was really cool. It was just for the boys and the crew and people like that. Well, Gerald Brisco is a huge country music fan. So he's sitting there just listening to Sawyer Brown, bebopping along as Oklahoma people do, whatever they do. I'm not sure. They're different people. They're further down the evolutionary chain. People in Oklahoma most of them are about 1 to 2 generations from all fours. So they're a little further down the evolutionary chain, but he's sitting there bebopping to this music. And I sneak up behind him and I jump him and I pin him between a rail and the floor. And I'm 300 pounds at the time, even though he's a great wrestler. I've got him. He can't move. And Sawyer Brown stops the concert. He goes, "Folks, we need to stop for a minute. Somebody's getting their ass whooped." And everybody starts laughing. So now I realize I've really screwed up because I've got to get off of him at some point. And when I do, he's going to get me. So I did the manly thing. I took off running and hid from him the rest of the day. So now Bruce, Vince, and Jerry go to that night to a bar. And the DJ announces, "Hey, folks, we'd love to say the owner of WWE is here, Vince McMahon, brother love, Bruce Pritchard, and the man who got his ass whooped by a Texan." So now Jerry, because you can imagine who set that up, our friend Bruce. Oh, yeah. So now Jerry is furious. He's sent off for shoes. He's sent off for shorts. He wants to fight me the next day. He legitimately wants to fight me. And for one, he's my boss. And two, he's like this. He's on the all-century Oklahoma State team. So this probably is not going to end well for me because I've tried Jerry many times. It does not end well for me when I try Jerry. It does when I sneak up on him and then run off like a coward. But Jerry had it up on the board, Bradshaw versus Brisco, all this shit. I'm like, oh my God. So all day long, I'm just trying to hide from it because I know it's coming. There's no way this is not going to be good. So finally Pat calls me into a room. I'm like, I should have known. I mean, this is like walking into your execution with the Galfinos or somebody, the Godfather. It's just, I walk in this room and there's Jerry. And he's sitting there, and he's sitting right across from me. And I sit down, and he's chewing me out. He's going, "John, listen, I'm a shooter. I've got this reputation. You can't do stuff like that to me." I don't realize at the same time, Conrad, only in hindsight, that he's taken off his watch. He's taken off his jewelry. In hindsight, I realize this. But at the time, I don't realize it because he's chewing me out so much. So I said, "Mr. Brisco, I'm sorry. I was just having fun." He goes, "We can't just have fun all the time. You got to do this." So finally I said, "Fuck, Jerry, I'm just having fun. It's not that big a deal." And when I looked down, he jumped me. So there's 2 chairs. My feet are in the chair, in the thing. And when he jumps me, I look up and I go, "Oh my God." So I land on my back and I've still got the chair around my feet. So I think, well, what do? All I can think of is, because I still got this chair on my feet, I spin over and I give him the rear naked choke. And he's got me. And he's got me good. And I'm sitting there and I'm starting to go unconscious. He's going, "Tap, you Texas pussy. Tap, you Texas pussy." And I'm like, "Nope, I ain't doing it. By now, all the boys have come in. Now they see me. My face is red as a tomato. And I'm thinking, this guy, he's gonna choke me unconscious. I'm like, I don't really want to do this. So finally I go, okay, I'll tap. And I go, I said, "I tap." He goes, "Nope, you got to tap like you mean it, you Texas pussy." So I'm like, oh God, no. And I start to look around. The whole room is getting blurry. The whole room is everything's starting to fade. I'm like, he may kill me. So finally I tapped and he was happy. He pulled me up and hugged me. He goes, that was great. We're friends again.
Chris, who's with us live here, part of our live studio audience from adfreeshows.com. He says, "When an old man starts taking his watch off, it's time to run."
It's time to run. And in hindsight, I realized it. In hindsight, he took his watch off right in front of me.
Yes.
He had his cheating glasses on. He took those off right in front of me. I'm sitting there because he's bollocking me so bad. I have no idea what he's actually doing, and I'm trying to get out of it. And next thing I know, he's jumped me, and I look back and go, he took his watch and his glasses off right in front of me before he jumped me. How stupid am I?
My goodness. You've also got in your notes that you once worked with Barry Windham in Africa. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so Jerry used to sit at ringside. This is where, in Kuwait, when he famously double arm suplexed Stone Cold right on the stadium floor. Steve tried to jump him, and he suplexed Steve. I'm like, Jerry, that's our meal ticket. That is our mortgage payments. That's our car payments. You almost killed the hottest name in wrestling, which, by the way, he ran over Tommy Wildfire Rich with a automobile one time with Michael Hayes, which is a felony, and almost killed him too. So there's precedent for this. So guys used to try to mess with Jerry. They thought it was fun. We had nothing else to do on these international tours. So Barry Windham, we're in the ring, and Barry goes, hey, kid, when we get done. And this is during the match, working with Furnace and LaFawn, by the way. And he goes, when we get done, he goes, hit him low. I'm going to hit him high. He goes, we're going to take out Brisco. Because, he and Barry Windham and Brisco stuck a pickup truck in a tree one time. True story. True story.
How do you stick a pickup truck in a tree?
You miss the stop sign.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a little red truck, and Barry used to drive a freaking 100 miles an hour everywhere Barry went. And they come up there, and Jerry yells, "You hear Jerry tell a story. It was on his property." He goes, "Stop sign!" And when he did, Barry hit the thing and went up, and they literally stuck a pickup truck in a tree. 100% true. They had to shake the tree to get it down. Yeah, Barry Windham stuck a pickup truck in a tree. You can ask Gerald Brisco, ask Barry Windham. Yeah. It actually stuck in the tree. Jerry for years had a tree that was broken because obviously it's not supposed to hold up a tree, but it hit the tree, and apparently it was only like 3 or 4 feet above the ground, but because the tree was breaking because the truck had so much weight. And then they shook the tree, and the tree broke. And so Jerry had this tree in his yard that was broke all this time because they put a pickup truck in it. So there's a lot of history between.
Hang on. You're going too fast. You got to let me process something.
Okay.
I'll just yeah, that you're like, well, now obviously the tree wasn't prepared to hold the truck. So
that's right. Yeah, they were driving like they did back in the day, 100 miles an hour. Barry Windham could drive a car so freaking fast. It was unbelievable. Barry was Cool Hand Luke, man. People talk about Harley. I'll put Barry Windham up against Harley. Now, that's two great legends. One's great, one's greater. But, man, that Barry Windham would drive a car. And he would drive that thing with his foot in the freaking carburetor like he stole it. It was shocking how fast Barry would drive. And so that's what he's doing with the little red pickup truck when they missed the stop sign and landed in a tree.
Well, I mean, that's a cartoon, what you just laid out. We got to recreate that with animation or something. Maybe we'll get AI on it. But tell me about the rest of this Africa story.
So Barry tells me, because Barry's got this history with Jerry, because I don't think Blackjack knew that he was giving Barry to Satan and Beelzebub, the Brisco brothers, to ride with. He told the Briscoes, he goes, would you take care of my boy Barry? Well, you give him to freaking Satan to take care of. So it's a wonder Barry's alive now. So Barry was tortured by the Briscoes. Now he loved it. It was fun, but he's this 18-year-old kid, having to drive them and all this stuff and, drink and smiz and all this stuff that the Briscoes do. So there's this history there. He goes, kid, hit him low. I'll hit him high. He goes, we're going to get his ass. So we're like in Joburg or something. It's like quite a big crowd there. We come by him, I act like I'm not doing anything, walking the dressing room, and all of a sudden I hit Jerry low and I got his legs, but I don't try to take him down because I expect Barry Windham to clean his clock. So I got his legs wrapped up. Now it's perfect for Windham just to knock him over like a freaking 10 pin in bowling, And I look and I see Barry is walking to the dressing room. He had double crossed me. And I'm like, oh, no. I've got hold of a Brisco in front of a live crowd. There's nobody to pull this man off of me. And now I'm stuck. And that Brisco got on my back. He got my nose. He clip your nose where you couldn't breathe and put his hand over your mouth where you couldn't breathe. So you're like dying. I mean, you're literally suffocating to death. And then he'd ride you. So after this match, you've got this guy in a suit down there that a lot of people knew, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people just saw this guy in a suit stretching Bradshaw. You're like, why is the fan beating up Bradshaw? So Brisco stretched me pretty good, and nobody came to help me. No, not a soul. They thought it was so funny. Then he comes back to the dressing room and he goes, you want to go round 2? I said, yeah, with Wyndham, not with you.
You know, you have a note in here, and I actually know a little bit about this one, but I don't know that we've ever told the story. But your note in here says the time Brisco died in Iowa. So this is a couple years ago. I was there, but didn't see this happen, but I heard about it, and it was the talk of Iowa that day. Tell us what really happened.
So I'm sitting with Jerry. We're in the bar there at the Hall of Fame, the Waterloo, Iowa Hall of Fame, which, you know, does wonderful, wonderful work. You've done a lot with Conrad, and Jerry is the head of the board and does wonderful stuff there. You know, Jerry's on the head of the board of the Hall of Fame. He's done stuff for Native kids all over Oklahoma. You know, Jerry does wonderful things. But he's sitting there with me in the bar, and he looks at me. He says, "Call 911. I'm having a stroke." And I looked at him, and as soon as I looked at him, because that's so strange to hear somebody say that, you know, you think he's joking or something, you know, you don't know why he said it. You don't think it's legit. But as he says it, his eyes roll back in his head, and he falls off the chair. And Tony Gurria's wife or girlfriend, whatever Marcia was there. She grabbed him. She's a nurse, and I grabbed him too. And he's, I mean, soaked, covered in sweat, and he's unresponsive, completely unresponsive. James Beard was right there with us. I said, James, call 911. And James started laughing. Then he looked and was like, oh, my God. So he called 911. The ambulance gets there in minutes. Of course, you know, there's nothing to do in Iowa. You know, birds fly upside down in Iowa because there's nothing worth shitting on. So there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do in Iowa. So the ambulance probably just driving around, you know, with a bunch of teenage kids drinking or something.
Oh, my God.
So the ambulance is there in like minutes. And Jerry is still not responsive. I mean, Conrad, I thought we had lost him or we're losing him. I thought this is it. And they put him on the gurney. There's fans everywhere in the bar, and they put him on the gurney. He's still not responsive. And I lean over to him, and he has not been responsive. His eyes roll back in his head. I said, Mr. Brisco, don't you die in Iowa. You know how embarrassing that would be. And he kicks out like the Undertaker, and he looks up and goes, no shit. And all the guys on the gurney are like, what does that mean? They go, your state sucks. I'm sorry, but at least he revived him. He literally kicked out and goes, no shit. So the next year we go back, fans were around. They'd come up to Jerry and would tell him, say, I heard Bradshaw say that. And you kick out and say, no shit. And that's when he kicked out because he didn't want to die in Iowa. I don't blame him.
Oh, what a fucking story. Hey, so you've got a bunch of different notes here, and I'm loving story time here. I want to ask, because I don't know what this means. Pissing on Brisco's hometown and Danny Hodge, what is that about?
Oh, yeah. This is one of the greatest ribs I ever pulled that backfired horribly on me. So me and Barry Windham are in Oklahoma on a day off for some reason. So we spend the day, and it took a lot of hours and a lot of miles of driving. So I went to the state sign, the Oklahoma state sign, and Barry Windham had a Polaroid camera, you know, way before cell phone pictures, and he takes a picture of me pissing on the Oklahoma state sign. So, you know, from behind. So then we go to Stillwater and Blackwell. Brisco's working and his hometown. His working hometown and his real hometown. And I take a picture of me pissing on the city limit sign. So I've pissed all over Oklahoma. I'm so proud of myself. I want to do this my whole life. I mean, every Texan does. You know, Oklahoma's kind of a toilet bowl. And they do have nice meth labs and some good bingo parlors. But if you go to Oklahoma, it's okay to just piss wherever you want. It's just kind of law. It's okay because it's Oklahoma. So now during this, I'm pissing on his city limit sign of his hometown. The Sheik passes by. He and Rikishi, I don't know what they're doing out in the middle of Country Road, but they pass by, you know, and I've told you before, Sheik thought my name was Brad Shaw, 2 names. So he comes by, and I'm sitting there, and Barry Windham's behind me with a camera. I'm peeing on the city limit sign, and the Sheik stops. Imagine this. This is like it's a story time. Nobody believed this, but this happened. And Sheik says, Mr. Shaw. And I said, yeah, Sheik. And he goes, is everything okay? And I said, well, yeah, Mr. Sheik, I'm pissing on Brisco's hometown. And he goes, oh, Brad, you're such a fine boy. And he drove off. That was it. It's like,
oh my God.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea. So the next day, I go into catering, and I'm so proud of myself. I got all these Polaroids. I had a toilet bowl full of, you know, poo that I'd taken a picture of. I put that up on top, and I put Brisco family reunion above the
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then I had pictures of me pissing on his city limit signs, his state signs. I was so proud of myself. Now I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get stretched again. I know it's going to happen, but I'm sitting there in the catering. I just can't wait for Brisco to see this. I can't wait. This is the greatest rib I've ever done, and I'm sitting there just waiting. I'm so happy with myself. In walks Brisco, Jack Brisco, his brother.
Oh no.
Now, I know Jerry won't kill me. I don't know if Jack will kill me or not. I'm like, oh shit. That's Jack Brisco. Oh my God. Because I don't know Jack as well.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, he's not going to find this funny. Jerry's not going to find it funny either, but he won't kill me. And behind Jack comes Danny Hodge. And I'm sitting there looking at him going, oh my God.
It's like the Expendables of wrestling just walked in.
That's right.
Yes.
Two of the toughest, meanest guys in wrestling history.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm going, oh shit. And there's one door and they're standing in it. That's it. There's one door. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. They're going to freaking kill me. So Jack is sitting there and he looks over and he sees the board of Brisco family reunion and me pissing on the city limit, the state sign. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm trying, and Barry Windham's not in the picture. It's just me. So I'm trying to like sneak out of the catering, and Danny Hodge sees it, and now Danny like steps and blocks my way out. And I'm like, oh shit, this is like the Alamo. I'm dead. I mean, this is it. I'm like, hey, what are all these Briscoes doing here? What are all these Mexicans doing here in Texas? I don't know. It's probably not going to end too well for me in the Alamo. And Danny, Mr. Hodge, says, oh, yeah, that's real funny. And Mr. Hodge, I don't know who did that. And he grabbed my hand, and I knew right then I was screwed. He grabbed my elbow with those speaking vice grip hands that he has that are so legendary. He had me on my knees. I was begging him to let me up. And then he hurt me so bad that I could not work out for probably 2 to 3 months. I thought he broke my elbow. That's how bad it was. Yeah. My ribs spectacularly backfired on me.
I just want to recap. We started this story where you talked about taping a picture of a toilet bowl after it had been used. You taped that up in catering.
Yes.
I love wrestling. You were the third nasty boy.
Yeah. The problem was freaking Danny Hodge and Jack Brisco showed up.
It is amazing just how many stories we hear about wrestling, and we say this all the time, that involve poop. What a shitty business.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to ask you a question. I've heard a story, and this can't be true. I believe it for Gerald Brisco, but is it true that maybe Brisco convinced Bruce, or maybe Bruce convinced Brisco because he knew he'd protect him, that they both put on amateur wrestling headgear and went looking for Kurt Angle once? That's not real, is it?
It's 100% real. And I saw them about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. It was late and I'd been drinking too, but I hear them out in the hall. I mean, you can hear them a mile away. And I open up the door and there's Mr. Brisco and Bruce, and they're in amateur headgear, and they're both so drunk they're holding themselves up, and they're walking down the hall. And I'm like standing at the door because I'm going to close it and deadbolt it because I don't know what they're doing, but it's not whatever it is. They're up to no good. I know that. I said, what are you guys doing? And they go, we're looking for Kurt Angle. We're going to stretch him. And I said, guys, out of all the ideas you've had in your life, this is probably the worst one. I said, this does not end well. I said, I don't know if you know much about Kurt, but he like beat everybody on the planet, like 8 billion people. I said, I really don't think you should find him. They're going, okay. And then they come at me and I deadbolt the door and lock it. So close the door and deadbolt it. So, and then they found Kurt and it didn't end well.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would. That's right out of the book of bad ideas right there.
It's like on the book of bad ideas. That's like on the cover. Like
yes.
We're gonna put headgear on and we're gonna go wake up Kurt Angle in the middle of the night and try and jump him. That's one of the worst ideas in the history of mankind.
Hey, another maybe not so great idea. You have a story about Eddie Graham's plane and Gerald Brisco. What can you tell us about that?
The fire.
Is this real? There was a fire on Eddie Graham?
Yeah. Rocky Johnson jumped out of the plane. Now, not when it was off the ground, but they were going down the tarmac to get to the runway to take off, and somebody's in the bathroom. You can imagine who, smizzen, and they catch the plane on fire, and they're still going to like take off. I guess they're thinking the plane will go out, the fire will go out with the wind or something up in altitude. I don't know. I mean, these stories with Eddie Graham's plane are legendary. Rocky Johnson jumped out of a moving plane because he said they thought the plane would blow up. So they pull over because Rocky's now on the tarmac by himself, jumping out as he jumped out of the plane. They pull over and put the fire out, and they go get Rocky and somehow talk him back into getting back on the plane. They take off and go to the town.
Rocky got back on the plane.
Rocky got back on the plane. Yes, 100%. That's the one thing I wanted to know from Jerry was, did Rocky get back on the plane? Rocky got back on the plane.
Did Brisco tell you exactly what caught on fire besides the marijuana?
No, the bathroom was something in the bathroom had caught on fire, and I think
toilet paper or something like that.
Maybe. I would think toilet paper or something, or they went to throw something down the toilet and something.
Oh shit! If they threw it lit, wow, that could be crazy.
And the plane apparently was smoking pretty bad, and Rocky sees all the smoke, and all he can think of is this plane's going to blow up, as you see in the movies. And so he opens up the door and jumps out the door as they're going down the tarmac to get on the runway to take off. And so once Rocky jumps out, now they can't leave because they're leaving Rocky behind. So they have to stop and go back and get Rocky. Then I guess secondary, they put out the fire. You think you'd put out the fire first. Then they put out the fire and they get Rocky. Rocky apparently agrees and gets back on the plane, and they go to the next town.
I'm not trying to prompt you to do it. I'm asking a yes or no question. Do you have a Brisco impression?
No, not very well. No, not very well.
Because I really wish Bruce was here right now to channel his Brisco impression and to kindly have Mr. Brisco notify Eddie Graham as he's piloting the plane. Mr. Graham, there may or may not be a fire. And the idea that Graham like, the fucking wind will put it out. Let's just go. Like, what?
Yeah.
Or only a wrestler as a pilot would say, well, what's the big deal? It's just the bathroom. Let's just go.
Right. It's just the bathroom near the fuel tank.
Yes. In the air.
Hey, Eddie Graham landed on tarmacs before. Eddie Graham landed on streets. Yeah. And he was, he drank a lot. And so I remember asking Jerry one time, I said, that not scary? I said, the drunkest ever been. He goes, yeah. He goes, Terry Funk was up there as a co-pilot. He was drunk too. I said, can Terry even fly a plane? He goes, well, no. I said, so he's not the co-pilot. He may be in the co-pilot's chair, but he's not the co-pilot because he can't fly. So yeah, they would literally get on a plane with a guy who was drunk and had landed all over the place. And one time they were flying out over the Gulf. They made a mistake. They were flying the wrong direction, and Jerry and some guys corrected him. And Eddie turned around and went back to Tampa. He was literally like flying to Cuba.
Oh man, what a crazy character. I think we're going to learn a little bit about him in an upcoming episode of Dark Side of the Ring. So we'll stay tuned for that.
Yeah, apparently in Bahamas, Lester Welch would pretend to get jumped, and he would steal all the money.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
He got jumped over and over and over.
Yeah, and then apparently the guys loved to go down to the Bahamas because you had all these beautiful women, and you had all kinds of extra things, a lot of extra things. And so the guys like, so what? We don't get paid.
I love you for that. Extra things.
Extra things.
Speaking of extra things, I want to ask you about Dick Slater in a Corvette. You've got a note here. I don't know this story.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get the runway, the speedway wrong. I don't know if it's Talladega or which speedway it was, because I'm gonna get it wrong. I think it was in Charlotte. I'm not exactly sure, so I'm gonna get the speedway wrong, but the story is right. So Dick Slater had this real fancy car, real fast, like like a Porsche or a Corvette or something, real freaking fast. Back then guys would drive, as fast as cars would go. And Slater was crazy. So he's driving with Jerry, and he finally goes by the speedway, and he sees a gate open. And Jerry goes, "Don't you dare." And he goes, "This is my chance. I've always wanted to run on that speedway." So it's like at night, they're drunk as they can be. They get on the speedway, take a lap on the speedway as fast as the car will go. A police car is behind them on the speedway. chasing them around the speedway at night. So they got the Brisco and Dick Slater, and the cop chase them around. When Slater gets back to where he came through, he just heads off the speedway, goes right out the exit, right out the road, and the cop loses the cop.
Oh, gosh, these stories are just legendary. It's a wonder that some of these guys are even alive. I do want to ask you, you've told us very early when we started talking on the podcast, a lot of stories about Black Bart. Did Black Bart ever have any interaction with Jerry Brisco?
Oh my goodness. You got to hear Black Bart. I wish I could had Black Bart here. I wish Black Bart was still alive, because I love Bart, and he's one of those guys I miss. I wish Bart was here to tell a story, because Bart would always sit there, those glasses, halfway down his nose. He'd sit there, that trash can, around, and he'd sit there and he'd push up his glasses like that. He goes, let me tell you something. He goes, let me tell you something. You long, tall drink of shit. That's what he always called me. I think he loved me. And he goes, I rode the Briscoes. And he goes, they gave me a daggum joint the size of my thumb. And he goes, it wasn't to pass. It was just for me. And they gave me a case of beer to put in my lap. And he goes, it wasn't to share. It was just for me. He said, I got so messed up, he's throwing up at the event. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Briscoes' car was legendary about what they did in the car. I got this old picture somewhere. I think I sent it to Stud Muffin, that Jimmy Garvin had just won the Leader of the Pack shirt. And he got this picture with Jerry and Jack in their cowboy hats. The shirt's covered in blood, because the way to get the Leader of the Pack shirt was Jerry and Jack would pull the car over, and you would challenge somebody to a fight, and you'd fight on the side of the road to see who gets to wear the shirt. So Jimmy Garvin had just won it that day, and there's blood all over the shirt, and he's sitting there having a beer with the Brisco brothers.
My gosh.
Yeah, think about that. You're driving along at 1 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden you see the Briscoes and Jimmy Garvin, a bunch of guys, and they're out fighting in a bar ditch, and it's all over a T-shirt.
You mentioned Terry Funk earlier. Do you have any Terry Funk stories over in Japan?
Oh, yeah. They terrorized a sleepy fishing village one time. So Terry and Jerry were stuck somewhere on a little island somewhere, and it was a fishing village. And they go by this wreck yard, and they see these motorcycles. And Jerry knows all about mechanics. He ran the body shop. And Terry Funk says, "You think we can get those motorcycles to run?" They said, "Yeah." So they paid, whatever it was, $20 for them, whatever it was. But they had no muffler. So when they come back from the wrestling show, they drive those, they get a bunch of booze and drive around on those motorcycles all over the fishing village all night until the next morning, when they'd finally decided to go to bed. Well, finally the police got called. The mafia got called. They're terrorizing the fishing village is what they used. They said they were terrorized. They're terrorists. So Joe Hamaguchi had to show up on behalf of the mafia. The police show up. There's a great picture. I'll send it to Dave Silva. Make sure you've got it, of them waiting to be arrested in Japan, Terry Funk and Gerald Brisco, over these motorcycles. So finally, Joe Hamaguchi shows up, and they make a deal. They only can drive their motorcycles during the day. So they were there for like another few days. So they couldn't drive them at night anymore because they didn't have a muffler. Well, then at the end, Terry Funk says to Jerry, he says, "What are you going to do with your motorcycle?" And he goes, Jerry says, "Well, I'm going to babyface it. I'm going to give it to some kid or something." So as they're driving back to the bus, they're still on their motorcycles. Jerry pulls over and literally gives it to some kid. He says, "Terry, what are you going to do?" He goes, "I'm going to drive mine into the ocean." So Terry Funk, being Terry Funk, tries to drive his bike off of a dock into the ocean. He's going to hop off the bike at the last minute and let the bike go into the ocean. Well, Terry misjudges, and he and the bike go stumbling down the dock together. Terry's all bunged up. The bike's all wrecked on the dock, and that's how they leave it.
These stories in Japan are wild. I do have a particular pretty famous story I want to ask you about over in Japan. But first, hey, let's talk a little bit about this famous story over in Japan. I don't know if this is true or not, but allegedly, once upon a time, the NWA and their world championship was the most highly regarded title in the entire world. This is before Vince McMahon that we know took over. This is way back when, before Hulk Hogan, before WrestleMania, before the national expansion. Whoever was NWA champion was king, and they really liked that over in Japan. And allegedly, Giant Baba had a different way about winning the NWA title. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I've heard it many times. It's an incredible story. And it goes to the thing, sometimes things are lost because the Briscoes were so crazy. I mean, they were nuts. You know, from the car rides to the Eddie Graham stuff to all the stuff that they did. I mean, they were just fun guys from Oklahoma. I mean, they're just fun country boys that really enjoyed a good time. People forget how smart these guys were. You know, they were ownerships in every territory they're part of. They're a big part of WrestleMania success. I mean, they've done so much for this business in so many different ways. You know, Jerry recruiting so much talent. It gets lost somewhere because of all the crazy antics, but it's just because they're fun people. I mean, there's nobody like the Briscoes. They're incredible, smart, wonderful guys. So what happened was, this is typical of the Briscoes now. So Terry Funk was booking partly, I think, with Baba, but he's also booking partly with Amarillo. He wanted to bring Jack in on his day off. You know, and Jack famously got tired of traveling. You know, that's one reason he didn't want to be NWA champion anymore. Famously threw his watch in, you know, Jerry's lake, you know, because he said, I'm never wearing a watch again. And he was getting tired of traveling. So Terry asked him to come in for a show in Amarillo, some payoff that was pretty good, whatever it was. And Jack said, no, I don't want to do it. So then Terry says, well, how about you go to Japan? And now I don't know what it started at, but it started at like 10 grand, 20 grand, something like that, whatever it was. It started at a pretty good amount, but not great. So Jack said, tell you what I'll do, because he thought about it. And he says, I'm going to come over there for a week. And he said, I'll drop the title to Baba. Now, this is the NWA, the most prestigious title in the world. Jack agrees to drop the title to Baba. And he says, but what I want is $250,000 cash, obviously. And the way he figured it was because Jack had figured all this out from different shows that he would be a part of, how you did this. So I saw your notes that you sent to me for Brisco and the report of this, that it was $25,000. And that's an important figure because that comes in how it works with the NWA and the commission that they were supposed to get. That was only for the last match. That wasn't for the tour. Jack negotiated the whole tour. So Jerry goes over there with him, and Jack goes out, drops the title to Baba. This is a very forgotten part of wrestling history. Drops the title to Baba, comes back, gets the title back. Jack ends up with $250,000. Now, back, nowadays, if you travel more than $10,000 internationally, you have to declare it. It's a hassle. They had $250,000. They literally taped $250,000 to themselves underneath their pants, underneath their shirts.
My God.
Got on a plane with $250,000 taped to them and landed in Hawaii. Back then, most of the flights would land in Hawaii before they go on. And that's why the Hawaiian territory was so big, by the way, because guys would stop there for a few days and have a little vacation and work for Peter Maivia. And so they stopped there, and that's when they went in the bathroom and took out $250,000 and realized they were in the free on this. So, yeah, Jack basically sold the title for a week for $250,000. Now, he cleared it, by the way. This is what's lost in this. People talk about how mad the NWA was. They were mad, but not about this. Jack cleared this with them. Jack cleared it with Eddie, cleared it with everybody. Go over there, drop it, get it back. Don't worry about it. The thing was, this was Jack. Jack wants the title back. He's going to get it. This is not, they used to famously send guys over. Flair has told the story. They'd send Jack Brisco or somebody else or, Billy Robinson or somebody over with Flair because they were worried somebody might take the title off of Flair. But now it wasn't just Rick. A lot of times with guys, they would send an extra over there, a shooter, to make sure that the Japanese did business and didn't try to take a title off somebody, because this is just coming out of the real screw job days where guys would take titles off people just because they could and because it was political. So Jack is a different animal. They know he's not going to lose the title. They know nobody's going to be able to take it off of him if he doesn't want them to take it off of him. So they were fine with this. But the problem came when the NWA said, okay, we need our booking fee. And Jack sent them the portion of the $25,000. And they said, wait a minute, you owe us off the $250,000. And Jack said, no, I don't. I owe you off the title match. He goes, I didn't have the title during that whole week when I was making money. So Jack had figured this out. He gets there, he drops the title, and he has all these matches. There's no commission coming off those because he's not the NWA champion.
Wow.
And then he gives them the money off the $25,000 that when he won it back. Jack's correct on this, by the way. And screw those guys taking a booking fee. I I get it. But that was the problem. That was the heat, was over money. It wasn't over Jack dropping the title. They had no problem with that because they knew Jack was going to get it back. They had problem with the money because Jack gave him the commission off the title match and not off the whole week.
I just want to put this in perspective. This happened in December of 74, this title switch. So $250,000 in December 74 dollars today in 2025 is over $1.5 million.
Right. And they had it taped to them going through customs. Back then you didn't get checked nothing. Back then you go into customs in Japan and they literally would point to things like they'd point to heroin and you'd shake your head no. You'd point to weed and you'd shake your head no. That was what customs was back then. So they knew they could get out. And so, that's why they still, you don't want to put it in your bag. So they had it all taped to them.
Just as a business guy, I can't help but ask, how the hell was Baba going to be able to monetize that? Like, I just think about in today's dollars, if some indie guy, some indie promoter, whoever became the WWE champion for a week, is that really going to represent 1.5 million of a return?
Yep, that's a great question. And it's the same thing I asked Jerry, and the answer is yes. So they made it. Jerry thinks, because he was there for all of it, he thinks they broke even on the tour. Believe it or not, I mean, they were selling out arenas. This is Jack Brisco and Baba. So he believes that they made money on the tour. But whether they did or not, he's in a fight with Inoki. This is right when Inoki and Baba are splitting, or at least either right after or right before, but it's all where Baba needs to make a name for himself. He needs that NWA title badly. It was worth $250,000 to him, $1.5 million in today's dollars to just write a check, even if you lose it just for the prestige of having held that title. But according to Jerry, he believes they made money off the tour. Jack was a huge draw, especially in Japan.
That's amazing. Hey, we know that Briscoe's been there for a lot of the major moments in wrestling. Famously, he's one of the guys who went down to Panama City when Vince bought WCW. I know you didn't make that trip, but did you ever talk to Jerry about that?
Oh, yeah. I asked him what the similarities was, and it wasn't that much a similarity because there wasn't an animosity. There wasn't Ole Anderson there, trying to undercut everything. It was the guys that were there that all of a sudden realized, oh, my goodness, the war's over. We've been bought by the other company. What do I do now? Do I get a job? Do I not? It was a complete different dynamic than what they call Black Saturday, which Jerry calls Green Saturday because that's when his brother made a fortune off Vince McMahon. And which, by the way, the Hall of Fame speech when I inducted the Briscoes, the biggest pop I got was I said all this stuff about the white man being mean to the Native Americans, and I said the red man got him back when he sold Georgia Championship Wrestling to Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And not many people in the arena understood it, but I could hear Vince howling from the back when I said that. Vince, which is the only person that I was actually saying it for, was him and the Briscoes. But it was a complete different dynamic from the Black Saturday, as they call it, to the Panama when WCW was bought by WWE.
We should talk about Black Saturday because anytime somebody brings that phrase up to Jerry, he always corrects it and calls it Green Saturday.
Yeah.
As I've heard the story, or I guess I read about the story, Briscoe was calling Vince McMahon to check on the health of a mutual friend of theirs.
I believe it was Roddy, wasn't it?
Maybe that makes sense.
I think it was Roddy. I was Roddy. Check on Roddy. I think it was Roddy. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but yeah, he was calling to check. Somebody had just gotten hurt.
And Vince asked sort of discreetly, "Can you talk?" And allegedly Briscoe says something like, "Kinda." So Vince gets right to the point because Briscoe's in a room full of wrestlers and maybe he doesn't want everyone to hear what he's saying to Vince McMahon. But allegedly Vince says, I'm
going to cut you off. He called from Crockett's office from what I understand.
Well, you tell me the story. You clearly heard it.
Apparently he called from Crockett's office. He just wanted to find out. I think it was Roddy. I think it was Hot Rod. And he wanted to find out how he was. And when he called Vince right away, he had apparently had in mind, when Vince was taking over the world, he was buying up everything, assets. So he was buying up talent, which everybody talks about, but he's also buying up TV contracts. He bought USA Network, out from underneath Joe Blanchard. And he wants this TBS network. He wants the national television. So Vince is buying up the assets that will get him to the next level, not just talent. Because Vince's key in a lot of this was two things. Obviously, great talent, but other places had great talent. But he had the best production in the world with Kevin Dunn, who's second-generation guy, and he had the better infrastructure. as far as everything that went with the infrastructure, which is how the Briscoes played into effect. So Jack calls to check on it, and all of a sudden Vince says, hey, you want to talk? And Jack did. Because what I understand from Jerry telling me is that when they lost Piper, that's when he knew the war was over. It wasn't, obviously Hogan, that was more with Vern, and there was a lot of things going on around, different talent. But he said, when we lost Piper, we knew the war was over. He said, not a doubt in our mind. And he said, we were looking to get out. And so that's when they started to figure out how to get out. They had 25% ownership of Georgia Championship Wrestling, my understanding. Ole had 10. Then you had Barnett, some others that, could equate to 90% of the ownership wanted to sell. It was only Ole Anderson was the sole holdout, but that's probably because he was skimming money.
Oh, you think Ole was skimming?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I say skimming. I think he was skimming legally. I think he was getting paid extra money. I say skimming. I probably shouldn't use that word because people are going to take that one word and extrapolate it into something that I don't mean. He was getting a big dividend. And that was one of the problems that Jerry and Jack had, was the big dividend that Ole was getting as the president. Ole was taking care of Ole, is what Ole was doing. So while it may not have been illegal, he was taking a pretty good chunk of change. Ole didn't want his gravy train to end, is what I believe.
Man, what a crazy story. Of course, we know that Brisco became one of Vince's right-hand men. And,
and by the way, that when Jerry and Jack sold this, they met with Vince up somewhere up in Airport Lounge, up in Newark or wherever.
LaGuardia, right?
Maybe LaGuardia, yeah. Airport Lounge. Arranged the deal. But now Jerry and Jack shopped this to everybody. They got a lot of heat over this. Eddie Graham had heat, I believe, until he passed away with the Briscoes over this. But they shopped this. They shopped it with everybody. So, guys, listen, they've got Piper. Vince is going to win this. Let's get out of this, make some money, and we're done. We can always do something else if we want to. Nobody wanted to buy it. Ole was the one that was blocking a lot of this stuff. And so it wasn't like they just all of a sudden sold it out from under anybody. They had to have 90% of the people that said it was okay of shareholders to do this. That's a huge freaking amount. That's not like they're the only ones that did this. They were 25% owners. They couldn't have done this by themselves. But they did this the right way. And then, famously, people heard it alleged. It was not alleged. It was true. Ole put a hit on them, a couple hits. So the Briscoes were wrestling somewhere up north, and the Road Warriors came up to them and said, hey, by the way, Ole offered us $5,000 to hurt you guys. And apparently Buzz Sawyer was the only one who said he was going to take it. And I think Buzz got his opportunity with the Briscoes and didn't try to take it. But the Road Warriors came up to him and said, hey, man, just want to let you know, here's what Ole did. And he's put a bounty on you guys, $5,000, which in my opinion, look, Ole's a tough guy. This is one of the most chicken shit things I've ever heard in business or wrestling, anything. You want to collect the bounty, go collect it yourself. Shut the locker room door and see what you can do. Don't hire somebody. It's just absolute chicken shit what Ole Anderson did. Jerry forgave him. Jerry went up and shook his hand at an appearance, before Ole passed away, but that's Jerry.
Man, what a wild story.
Yeah. And there was a report. Now, this is unsubstantiated, okay? The Briscoes were told this, but don't know if this is true or not, or just Ole bragging, that he put a mafia hit on him also. That is completely unsubstantiated, but that was reported at the time, that they told Jerry and Jack, hey, there's been a legit mafia hit put on you. Don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if Jerry knows if that's true or not, but the $5,000 bounty, that's 100% true. They even wrestled Buzz Sawyer a few weeks later when Buzz said he was going to collect the bounty, and Buzz didn't try. He was all talk. Tough guy, but Buzz was a tough guy, but he wasn't a Brisco. That's a different level tough. And to this day, Ole Anderson to me, that's just a coward that puts out a bounty on somebody and hides behind a desk, and especially when you're supposed to be a tough guy.
Of course, the Black Saturday stuff went down in July of '84, and in March of the following year was the very first WrestleMania. I've never talked to Brisco. Did he have much involvement in that? I do want to talk about that, but first, I do want to ask you about Ribs. But first, let's get back to WrestleMania. Did Brisco have any involvement in that first WrestleMania?
Huge, absolutely huge. Yeah. So when Vince signed the Brisco brothers, obviously you got two great talents, as what they call him, the Steam Blood, or Jerry calls Steamboat Ricky up there. He always conflates the two names. He does it on purpose. Jerry does a lot of that stuff on purpose. Just does he not know? He loves when people think that, because he's actually messing with people. But anyway, they got not just talent, they got the ability to get into closed circuit arenas. It's Vince. We had George Napolitano on our show with me and Gerald Brisco, and he told us that Vince, something that we hadn't heard before, Vince had a stake in the magazines back as early as 80. Vince understood the periphery that went around wrestling. He understood, he ran the Cape Cod Arena for several years. He understood how to make money off ancillary events more than just wrestling, which is a big differentiator between Vince and so many people. Because a lot of times when you start up a wrestling promotion, all you're worried about is putting people in seats, which is, you have to do that first. But you're not worried about so much ancillary revenue through merchandise, through all the different things that can happen. Well, what Crockett did was in 83, the Starcade, whatever it was, the Starcade was a tremendous show. 10 to 12 of those guys, I can't remember the number at this point, were future WWE Hall of Famers. Vince poached most of that card. But the one thing that Crockett didn't have was the infrastructure to make money off closed circuit. So even though he had a great product, he had incredible talent, as much as up north in WWE, he didn't have the ability to make money, not big money. The Briscoes, because they had done so much in the territories, knew all of these towns, knew all of these territories, knew all of the arenas. So Jerry got WWE in all of these closed circuit arenas all over from Florida all the way up to Detroit. That was a huge part of WrestleMania's success. Jerry tells me that Vince would be calling him all during WrestleMania. Now this is payphones, with a cord, not payphones, but probably a phone with a cord in the garden, calling Jerry, go, hey, you got an update here, you got an update there. He wanted to know all the updates about the closed circuit, not just what was going on in the ring. So the Briscoes coming in was a huge part of WrestleMania's success because it gave Vince the infrastructure to make money in closed circuit.
Man, I guess I didn't really think about this, but it's not like when Briscoe went to work for Vince that he was the Vince we know now. This is the Vince that has to wind up selling back. So what's interesting about that whole dynamic is, he needed the money in order to get WrestleMania launched. So he winds up selling the TBS deal back to Crockett's. And I've heard, allegedly, according to the rumor and innuendo, that Vince may or may not have kited some money in order to get that first WrestleMania going, where he goes and gets a loan from one place, deposits the cash, goes to the plaza at another bank, and then shows that he has all this cash, the second bank not knowing that that's actually loan proceeds from the first bank. And before you know it, he's got a bunch of lines of credit. I guess the narrative that's out there, we've all heard, is, boy, if WrestleMania flopped, we were done for. That's the real truth. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He was over leveraged, and if this doesn't work, he's back in the mobile home trying to figure it out, right?
I've heard all of what you said about as far as where he got the money. I don't know if any of that's true. I know he mortgaged his house. I know that is true. I kind of hope it is, because I think it's cool.
I do too.
I think it's awesome. Listen, I'm not saying any of this is true, so don't you guys quote me out there and stuff. But if he borrowed money from one, put it in the bank so he could borrow money from another off the money that he put in the bank off the borrowed money, I think it's great. I have no idea the veracity of that claim. I hope it's true. I've heard he got money from the mafia. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I have no idea if any of that's true. I hope it is, because I think it's awesome if it is. But yes, if WrestleMania doesn't work, we might end up, Vince McMahon may not be gone, but brother, it ain't happening. This territory takeover, Vince had a lot of failures. He had like a horse farm, some type of mining company back in the 70s. They were horrible failures. Then he promoted the Snake River Jump with Evel Knievel, which was as Vince would say, it was an artistic success. But everything else lost a freaking ton of money. Vince had a lot of failures, which is a lot of people don't talk about a lot of that. Vince had a lot of failures leading up to these successes. I remember when I was doing something, Vince goes, hey, John, I want you to be successful, but if you're not, don't worry about it. You will be in the future with something else. And that came from experience. The only way to find out stuff is to do it. And when there's no template for it, How do you know what template is there for Evel Knievel jumping Snake River? There's not. Vince was the one that was behind it, and the damn thing went bust. But then he learned. Then he went to Cape Cod. He got all this basic knowledge of how to promote. WrestleMania was the same thing. That man is not scared to roll the dice. He is not afraid at all. When we first put the over-the-top stuff, and we cannibalized our own pay-per-view revenue, there were people in the company saying, we got to abandon this model because it's not working. And it wasn't working. And Vince was one of the few people saying, nope, this is the future. He doesn't like being that far ahead of the curve. Vince will tell you all the time, I want to be just behind the curve, not ahead of the curve, because I don't want to be the guy that, as they say, and Mr. Brisco hates this because it's a Native American references, the pioneers get arrows, the settlers get land. That's what Vince thought about being behind the curve. But this WrestleMania, if this doesn't work, Vince is out of the picture for maybe forever.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, John. I've always loved that aspect of him. I want to believe that it's true because my man risked his life, his liberty, his fortune. He put it all on the line. And just to have that sort of damn the torpedoes attitude and self-belief, that's what it takes to be successful sometimes. And I love what you said about, hey, your advice or the advice he gave you, maybe you'll be successful at something in the future. Not maybe, but if you're not now, you will be in the future, because that's really the way life is. Like, you can't lose until the game is over. And as long as you're still playing, you still got a shot. And I just love that aspect about him.
Yeah, me too. And he told me, I wish I had the quote, the quote was something to the effect of, because I had a launch something I was doing, and Vince couldn't make it. And he said, America's built on entrepreneurs. And he said, I'm proud of you for being an entrepreneur. And that's when he told me, he said, I hope you're successful this time. He goes, but if you're not, it's not the end of the world. You will be in the future. Just keep plugging. And it was really cool what he said. That came from, sometimes he'd open up the kimono and kind of let you into his mind a little bit. And that was one of those times.
Well, of course, we're talking about Vince. We should get back on track and talk about Jerry Brisco. But I just love knowing that Brisco was a big part of making this thing happen. And, not like the, multi-millionaire, billionaire Vince McMahon that we know now, but the guy who's having to risk it for the biscuit on a hope and a dream. And he's just out here selling and hoping and praying, and it lands, it works. And we're now all having fun because of it. I do want to ask you, you've got a note here that I can't make heads or tails of. What does this mean? A go-kart race? There's a go-kart race story with Brisco?
Oh my God. So we're down in South Africa, and I believe we're up in Pretoria, which is just north of Joburg. They got an area up there where they've got a bunch of golf courses, casinos, and things. I think that's where we were. And they had a go-kart track. So me and Gerald, and I think Barry Windham and Tony Gurria, and there may have been some others. Dustin may have been with us. Went out to the go-kart track, and it turned into crash them up go-karts. You're not supposed to wreck those things. I at one point ended up on top of Jerry's go-kart, on top of him with my go-kart. Could have killed him. I drove through a barrier because I wanted to beat him, and so he had gotten ahead of me somehow, and I drove through a barrier of tires. I knocked all these tires all over, and I hit Jerry's go-kart and knocks me up on top of it. And so that's the guy finally came and got us, goes, you guys just got to leave. You just got to leave now.
You also have a note in here about Ron Simmons in Cape Town. Is this the same trip here?
It was, yes, same trip. Yeah. So Ron, we were in Cape Town, and Ron's room had flooded. The whole room had flooded. It flooded so much, it flooded the downstairs lobby.
How does it flood?
We found out later it was Savio Vega. I didn't know this for years. Savio and Rikishi did something to the bathroom or something. Yeah, it was like a rib or something. I don't know why you'd rib Ron Simmons, but Savio apparently did something to it. Savio told us later on our podcast. I never knew that, and I was there. So now I don't know if it was all Savio or if it was whatever it was. But anyway, Ron's room has flooded. So there's water everywhere. So Ron's on the bus the next day. He's got his dark shades on, which, by the way, Ron used to do this deal where he'd get on a plane early with Teddy Long. He'd act like he's blind with these dark shades. It was one of the funniest things you've ever seen. They would sit there, and Teddy would lead him on the plane, and Ron would walk around like Stevie Wonder, like he's blind. It was one of the funniest. So he's sitting there with those shades on, and Jerry walks in, and he is just perplexed. He goes, Ron, there's water everywhere. And Ron goes, yeah. And Jerry said, well, Ron, it came from your room. And Ron goes, yeah. And he goes, Ron, what happened? And Ron goes, yeah, Jerry, the peoples, they came to my room. And Jerry says, Ron, what peoples? What are you talking about? Well, Ron's not wanting to stooge anybody, and he didn't know what to say. So Ron finally says, Jerry, the peoples, they come, and Jerry just looks at me and goes, Ron, how about I just find you some money and we'll forget about it? Ron goes, yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. And that was it.
I have a feeling Ron didn't have to pay that fine.
I guarantee he didn't.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've talked a little bit about behind the scenes, but I want to remind everybody that Gerald Brisco may be the highest rated WWE superstar in television history. Is that right?
100%. I looked it up the other day. There were like the top three, and I'm not sure which ones were overrun or not, but Jerry drew a 8.6 rating. Me and Ron were actually first on that segment, by the way, which I always remind Jerry of. But yeah, so think about this. Jerry was one of the biggest drawing tag teams and singles wrestlers of all time. He's done all this stuff. He helped with WrestleMania. He sold Georgia Championship Wrestling. He's done all these things in wrestling. And then years after his prime, he goes back with Pat Patterson and forms the Stooges. And they draw an 8.6 rating in the middle of the Rock and Stone Cold era. And he outdrew everybody. They have a match with Mean Street Posse, and the damn thing did an 8.6. Now, think about that, Conrad. You will never, ever have a rating higher than that. Now, I know TV's differently now. You have, a million and something with The Rock, 100 million views on different social media platforms. TV's different. That's one of the main reasons. You will never have a rating higher than what Jerry did, which is 25 years after he was NWA Junior Champion. I mean, that's one of the most incredible runs of all time, what Brisco has done. Think about that. You've got Stone Cold, you got The Rock, you got Undertaker, you got all these guys, and you got Gerald Brisco and Pat Patterson drawing the highest rating damn near of all time.
And people say funny don't draw money. I don't know about that.
Entertaining draws money. I agree with you. If it's entertaining, it doesn't matter if it's funny or mean or whatever else. If it's entertaining, it draws money.
Well, once upon a time, guys worried about drawing heat in the backstage area. And you have a note here about George Steele. We know that not only was he a fabulous performer in front of the camera, but he was also an agent behind the scenes. And I imagine that whatever story you're about to drop on me is not about his in-ring days, but I can't wait.
So we're in Europe. It's when that great picture was taken, which is the one thing I regret. I regret leaving the Montreal Screwjob early, and I regret not being in that picture because I was on the bus that day. And they were sitting in the back. And, I don't know if this was a time where drug testing or I don't know. A lot of guys had a bunch of weed, and a lot of guys let smoking the weed, and one thing that, one mistake they made was they banned the weed and the guys got on pills, which was, now, which is something in hindsight they shouldn't have done. But George was a guy that we were worried about that might tell somebody. Brisco is not one of those guys we're worried about is going to tell somebody. Brisco, you understand, we had a crazy roster. I mean, these guys were nuts and big guys, insane. They got away with murder because they're famous. They did crazy, crazy things. They got away with all kinds of things that, that normal people wouldn't get away with. They knew that. They knew they had a license to do whatever they wanted. Only a couple guys could really handle these guys. Now, they all respected the agents, so it wasn't like they ran over the agents. But Jack Lanza and Gerald Brisco were the two guys that Vince knew that he could send on anything, and Jack and Jerry would take care of things. So they're all the boys are sitting in the back, and they've all got a bunch of Smiths from somewhere, and everybody's got one. Now, me and Ron are not Smithers, so we got our beer. And Undertaker says, "All right, guys, listen. Nobody hits it until George Steele hits it," because we were worried George might tell on them. So they come to the back, and the guys are all just kind of sitting there like minding their own business. Like that's what they're doing, like, on a bus. And so somebody, I don't know if it's Taker or somebody else, said, "Hey, George, would you like some of this?" Now, nobody has opened up nothing. Nobody's smoking nothing. And George looked at it and he goes, it's been years. I don't know about that. He goes, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe just one. So George, he went to had like a Coke can, with the weed in it as a pipe. So George, when he hits the lighter to hit it, and as soon as he hit it, it looked like a Cheech and Chong concert. About 15 joints popped up. The whole bus was full of weed. Everybody's sitting there waiting. Everybody's got it in their hand. As soon as George hits it, they're hitting it.
That's so great. Well, listen, you were hitting it hard for us today. We had a lot of fun talking about your old pal, Jerry Brisco. And if you can't get enough of John talking about Jerry, what if you listen to John talk to Jerry? It's Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. It's available everywhere you enjoy podcasts. You can check them out on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. They've got hundreds of episodes. They've talked to a who's who of professional wrestling. And that's what you get on that show. More stories like you heard today. So what are you waiting for? Go hit the subscribe button and check these fellers out. It's Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. John, we're recording on a Thursday morning, so we're a few days before the rest of the world is going to hear this. So at that point, SmackDown's in the rearview mirror, and well, there's an AEW pay-per-view, and I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff that's going to happen. What are you headed to do this weekend? What's on your agenda next?
I'm going to Lexington, Kentucky with Ron. It's some Comic Con or whatever that is in Lexington, Kentucky, whatever it is. It's a big deal. It's a huge Comic Con there. Be with Ron Friday and Saturday, and then I'm going to Cincinnati for a wrestling event in Cincinnati. I'm looking forward to it. So I got a busy schedule. I just got a surprise booking for the following week, but these two bookings have been announced. So I'm going to go close on somebody. Hopefully, hit a leprechaun with a trash can.
I saw you post a picture with D'Lo the other day. Where'd you run into D'Lo?
In Europe at For the Love of Wrestling at Manchester. Yeah.
I just had my first conversation ever with D'Lo. I've shook his hand once at a TNA show years ago, but he was working and I was there for a meeting and we didn't get to chop it up. But what a great guy he was.
Yeah.
And we had a whole conversation that's going to be published over at adfreeshows.com. It's one of the more emotional interviews we've ever done. I mean, I just absolutely loved it. I want to encourage everybody listening to this to check it out. I was happy to see that photo of you with D'Lo, but I was also noticing, man, you were swimming in your clothes a little bit. Are you getting in ring shape? Are you getting that shoulder warmed up? What's going on?
I've got the amateur wrestling mat out here in my garage with the suplex dummy me and Jerry called Bruce. So yeah, I've been working out pretty hard, and so trying to get in shape. And I do have some plans. Absolutely, 100%. Hopefully, you'll see all those plans within 2 months.
Well, I'm looking forward. Can't wait. And I want to keep everybody abreast that we're still working on Layfield lures. We actually see Dave in the QC who says, I need to buy some Layfield lures. Take my money. We got to come up with a plan here, John. We got to get these lures in the hands of the people.
I'd love to. They're great fishing lures, and plus they're homage to my uncle. So yeah, I'd love to figure out a way to get them out. I've certainly got a ton of them.
Want to give a shout out to Coach Rosie. He and his team made it to the state championship this weekend. I hope they do really, really well this weekend. And hey, I'd love for you guys to check us out over at adfreeshows.com if you haven't already. You get bonus episodes each and every month from all my different podcasts. In fact, there's over 100,000 hours of bonus content, including exclusive series you can't get anywhere else. Conversations with Downtown Bruno about behind the scenes of the WWF he's never told. Sam Adonis teaches us all about Lucha Libre, and it's always been something I was interested in, but I didn't really speak the language, so I didn't really understand it. But I'm learning a lot more and having a blast doing it. Television is a big part of what we do on adfreeshows.com. We've got Tully Blanchard talking about some of his more iconic moments in his career. We're also picking the brains of Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick each and every week on the Monday mailbag. You get to ask those questions. We throw you guys the keys to the show, and you're in control. We're also going through page by page, day by day with David Crockett in a series called The Book. We broke down every single show from 1985. Now we're in the process of doing 1986. And earlier this week, we did an incredible watch-along of Starrcade 86, where we were joined by not only David Crockett, but Tully Blanchard and Ricky Morton and Nikita Koloff. It was special. You got to interact with these folks, ask questions, and Ricky Morton broke down exactly what he was thinking step by step through the match. Just understanding the psychology of pro wrestling, peeling back the curtain. That's what adfreeshows.com is all about. Ask the Godfather or Lex Luger or any of our other bonus content, more than 100,000 hours, and it's really become like a big second family. Come join the fam at adfreeshows.com. John, I had a blast talking about Jerry today. I'm looking forward to next week. If this is right, we're talking about Shawn Michaels next week. I mean, when you
awesome. I love Shawn. He came and stayed with me, not with me, but in Bermuda with me one time, not with physically at my house. And we went fishing and did some stuff for his fishing show. So I've always had much love and respect for Shawn. And by the way, Chioda and Nick Patrick, great referees they're not very common. Those two guys are great referees, and their insight into what they have because they were in the middle of everything. That's got to be really cool to have those two guys, because those two guys are really smart guys and terrific referees. Nick Patrick is one of the few guys who could call a match from the referee position for guys, which is kind of hard to do.
Listen,
it's real hard to do.
At times, the referee's been called the third man in the ring because it's true. And you think about all the iconic moments that guys like our pal Charles Robinson have been a part of, and even this past weekend, at the big pay-per-view. But now fast forward, and we have an opportunity to talk to guys about those special moments for both Nick Patrick and Mike Chioda. Think about all the history through the years. It's really something. I mean, the Hogan Rock match, Mike Chioda was the referee. The Hogan Sting match at Starrcade, well, there's Nick Patrick. I mean, it's unbelievable, their history and the stories they have. I really encourage you to check out adfreeshows.com. I think it's the best value in wrestling right now. And you can get a lot of bonus content. But next week, right here for free, each and every Monday, John and I are going to be with you at somethingtowrestle.com. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications bell. We're going to endeavor to start going live a little more often and talk about what's happening as it's happening. That's somethingtowrestle.com. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss us the next time we're live. John, next week, it's the one and only Shawn Michaels right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.